Echan chatzir ha'am, yavesh chatzir navel tzitz, v'devar Eloheinu yakum ya'olam. A voice says, cry out. And I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when a wind of the eternal blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. Yeah. Shaviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki mimini bal emot, lechen semach libi v'yagel kvodi, af besari yishkon lavetach. I have set the eternal always before me. I shall not be moved. Therefore is my heart at peace, and my being is secure. For you do not abandon us in death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show us the path of life. Your presence brings fullness. Endurance is your gift. We are gathered here beneath this blue sky to mourn the death and celebrate the life of Mark Davis. Adonai ma'adam v'tadehu ben enosh v'tashvehu. God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass which in the morning shoots up renewed and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing material away. No earthly glory accompanies us. But mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Adonai, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trusts in you shall be forever desolate. Death has taken our beloved Mark. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Mark's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that bring us the ancient and yet ever new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with our Creator, in darkness even as in light, in sorrow even as in joy, in death even as in life. From Psalm 16, Adonai mi yagor bo halecha mi yishkon behar kodshecha. God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain. Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Before we arrived here, we spent some time with the family reflecting at Temple Hesed as Mark had wished. As his casket was lowered, we played Brian Eno's The Big Ship, which was also a wish of Mark's, one that we don't fully understand. But it was one apparently that he shared with a number of filmmakers. It's appeared at least in 3 films in the past 10 years to accompany scenes of farewell and death. I read there and read again here from Psalm 23, which, though it speaks of death, is meant to comfort us, the living, and to remind us of our companionship along the way. Adonai ro'i lo eksar, bino teshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot, yenach aleini. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek, leman shemo, leman shemo. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in the right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Mark and I shared an affinity for mountains. studying them, climbing them, getting lost on them. As I learned how to rock climb, I came to view Psalm 121 in a different light. It starts, I will lift my eyes to the mountains, whence is the source of my help? As if you're looking at the mountain and you see your help there. But sometimes we get to the foot of the mountain and we look up and we say, wow, I lift my eyes to this mountain. God, I need your help. We're at a moment like that as we mourn Mark. A mountain before us. And we hold each other up as we ascend. Esainai el heharim mein yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector does not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. So the sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from harm, guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. Kohelet wrote in Ecclesiastes, L'chol zman ve'et, l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. For everything there is a season, a time, for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to discard. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. We share first some moments of silence together as each of us reflects on our own connection with Mark. And then it will be a time to speak, and we will hear from his family and friends. We pause for silent reflection. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, be acceptable to you. Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Adonai, my rock and redeemer. Amen. First, hear from Mark's wife, Joan.
I feel so proud of Mark that no matter what I say today will be fine. The only way I'm going to get through this speech is if I remember the words that Mark said to me not long ago when we visited my mother's grave site in Derby, Connecticut. With uncontrollable tears running down my face, he turned to me and said, "We come to honor, not to grieve," which immediately shut off the spigot of tears as I gained comfort and composure. That was Mark, always with the right word and the embracing hug. I was never as technologically savvy as Mark, as I think many of you know. The day after he died, mysteriously, all of our living room lights, computers, televisions, garage doors, and gas stove switches went out. I thought, this is a challenge put out by my dearest husband, telling me, you can do this. Well, it took 5 people to figure out that the main circuit breaker had been turned off. I am not sure that I will be able to handle all the technological kerfluffles that may be in my future, but I feel convinced there are many people out there who can help me. And one of you just may be the one. Mark's battle with brain cancer started in November 2019 and ended on April 2nd, 2021. It was a treacherous path we tread, knowing that the dire prognosis was 15 months. Well, he surpassed that, living 17 months after his diagnosis. Still, the time we had would never be long enough. Amazingly, after his first surgery in December 2019, he got back on his bike, riding nearly every day for up to 90 minutes. When it came to persistence in exercise, Mark was always my hero. Some of our best moments were when we exercised side by side. He on his trusty titanium steed, me on the elliptical. I could keep a good pace going sometime, but other times I would knock off at about 20 minutes and think I was doing great. I would look over at him with sweat fogging his glasses and sweat dripping down his face as he climbed hills virtually on Zwift, an app which enabled him to jockey for position with riders all over the world through the highways and byways of London, Paris, Central Park, and beyond, using avatars. When he entered hospice in February, I decided that the only way I could preserve my mental health was to exercise every day. After a long hiatus, taking care of Mark, I forced myself back on the elliptical, and after a few times out, started setting personal goals for myself. I kept thinking of all the effort he put into staying fit and learned the joy of sweat and exertion. But only one of us grasped their progress on a spreadsheet. Mark's kindness and thoughtfulness were noted by many who have corresponded with me. His scientific skills were described as insightful and rigorous. When he was promoted to senior research scientist, he gained stature and scientific freedom. But looking out for the younger scientists and mentoring others were just as meaningful for him. Mark and I had few fights. Most of them ended quickly in laughter and apologies. The only one that really hurt both of us deeply happened several months into his illness, when I was advised to take on our family finances. Wresting this control from Mark caused sparks and anger between us both. He had formulated budgets on Excel, filled out FAFSA forms, and juggled college tuitions, while for a long time I didn't even know our monthly mortgage payment. During those stressful transition times, we put all of our bills on auto payment, and soon I became the one paying them. Only when I began doing it did I realize what a labor-intensive job it was. He had made it look easy. How will I live without this man who was the center of our lives? The person our kids went to for advice on jobs, colleges, or how to deal with mom. But I have decided quickly since his passing that he will always be a force in our lives, for he has taught us everything he knew, and a good teacher never leaves his students. His best advice may have been the one passed down from his father, Sheldon Davis. Keep your options open. And there were others too. We can do nothing when it comes to preventing you from leaving this earth, but you will always be our guiding light. Our crowning achievements will always be our dearest daughters, but I will miss sharing the memories with you. You have departed far too early, but I know that you are at peace now, and the suffering is over. I will forever and ever love you, for you are the love of my life. Not everyone can say that. How did I ever get so lucky? Clearly, we both hit the jackpot. You want to go, honey? No.
All right.
Thanks for coming out for our dad. An important lesson from my dad. I'm going to take this off.
Oh, that's a good idea.
An important lesson from my dad is that it is always okay to cry at funerals. My sister and I like to tease my dad that he was quite the nerd. Reading a highly technical paper about a hyper-specific topic was a happy occasion for him. Once, he even conducted a months-long experiment where every time he made popcorn in our kitchen microwave, he recorded how long it took for that first kernel to pop. Still awaiting publication. But many people are surprised to hear that he was actually a pretty subpar student all through high school. He started his academic career at Pierce College, a local community college whose only admission requirements, my dad joked, were that he was 18 and breathing. But Pierce College was a key transition period for my dad, as he realized he could either slack off for the rest of his life at his mom's house or buckle down. I know I am not spoiling the story when I say my dad did, in fact, buckle down and make something of himself. He would go on to get his Ph.D. in geology from Yale, including writing a dissertation that was rated distinguished, the highest level granted. The saving grace for my dad when he was a young, unmotivated student was that he loved science, particularly astronomy and meteorology, and that even as he did poorly in school, he was still deeply interested and curious about the world around him. He had his older brother, Paul, watching from Venice, California, to thank for that. Oh, this is out of order.
Oh my God. It's okay, honey. You got it.
I'm glad I numbered the pages. Okay. Years later, when he would come to my science fairs growing up, my dad would always look for the kid who maybe didn't have the flashiest poster or the cool baking soda volcano, but who was doing actual science, asking a question, formulating an experiment, and testing it out. He loved those science fairs. I think he was looking for himself. My dad loved teaching my sister and I about the science around us. How to spot the North Star, why the sky was blue, or how to identify geologic clues while hiking. He persisted even when we rolled our eyes, and I am grateful for that. My mom was the perfect complement to my science-oriented dad, helping him see things in a new way. For example, my dad knew all there was to know about the moon, but my mom still managed to surprise him when she asked him whether he knew about the man on the moon. That is, the highly unscientific, abstract smiley face you can make out in the moon's craters if you squint your eyes a little bit. They were an amazing couple whose love and commitment to each other buoyed our whole family. My mom was his rock over this past year. He was also an incredible father. Dedicated, loving, honest, accepting, kind. When I would come home to visit from college, my dad would make sure that we spent some one-on-one time together, usually at a coffee shop. We would talk about my classes and friends and goals for the future. I could brag to him about things I was proud of, but also confide in him about things I thought I messed up. He would share lessons he had learned, passing on advice that had served him well. That one-on-one time was so important to him, and to me too, as I got older and could appreciate it. We were so alike, and he understood me so well. My dad always listened closely and intently, and those conversations made me feel seen. He believed in me more than anyone. For things big and small, my dad was my sounding board, as I'm sure he was for some of you. His judgment was reasoned, thoughtful, and always carefully weighed. As I got older, the highest compliment I got from him was that he trusted my judgment. I am not looking forward to making decisions without him, but I know that he trained me well. One of the biggest gifts my dad gave us was camping trips in Vermont. Every summer, we would stuff the car to the brim with supplies and make the 7-hour trek up to Lake Elmore State Park. He took advantage of that 7-hour drive to expose us to all types of music, including some pretty weird music. But for over a decade, we stayed in the exact same campsite, number 45. My dad was nothing if not a man of tradition, and we always slept on the ground in a tent, never a cabin. My dad ran the show on these trips, for better or worse. One summer, you're reading ahead.
I know, I'm sorry.
One summer, our trip revolved around a guidebook my dad had purchased on the best bogs in Vermont. I cannot tell you how many wet, marshy, secluded swamps my dad dragged us to. We felt victorious when we finally negotiated a break from the bogs and went to the Ben & Jerry's factory for the 50th time. In retrospect, of course, they were the absolute best summer days. A chance to slow down from all the different activities Sarah and I had and just hang out together as a family. I am sure that is exactly what my dad intended. When he was sick, we would talk about his favorite places. And Vermont was always near the top. Me too, Dad. This past year challenged my dad in ways he never expected. But he prided himself on being a good patient, never complaining too much or lashing out, taking his medication when he was supposed to. In fact, when he was hospitalized for surgeries, he made it a point to learn the name of everyone who helped take care of him. Doctors and nurses, yes, but also aides, cleaners, transporters, phlebotomists, and food deliverers. We are indebted to the incredible staff who took care of my dad at Penn and elsewhere along this journey, particularly the aides who worked in our home these last few months and lifted my family up during our hardest days. My dad would also want to give a special shout out to his two favorite nurses, his sisters-in-law, Debbie, watching from home, and Beth, who advised on all things and even came to stay with us for periods during the last few months. My dad was sweet and loving to us until the very end, and we will miss him forever. Okay. Another thing many people might not know is that my scientist dad loved poetry. In fact, he dabbled in writing some himself. The following one, titled Teachings, that I just remembered this week, was sent to me in 2015, and it seems especially appropriate to share today. Teachings. From these people have I learned important life lessons. From Bob Tannenbaum, trust yourself and be who you are. From Sheldon Davis, my father, the HR specialist, keep your options open. From Jerry Roth, the hardest lesson, don't be judgmental. Each created from years of experiment, sweat, tears, success, and failure. All three gone now. What can I hope to pass on? I think of this. Learn from your elders. On several occasions, I have traveled to encounter those now out of the mainstream, as their careers may be past peak, but not their wisdom. It thrives with time. One needs to know the questions to ask a sage, but the time is rewarded. Ask and ask again, and listen more than you think possible. A collective knowledge spanning decades is at hand. Don't let pride, social awkwardness, or your own dullness spoil the moment. It is too important, more than any school lesson. But wisdom and special knowledge can come from those younger than us. From these, we must be especially vigilant, for time is against them. An aging need not bring insight and deep reflection. It can also bring resentment and bitterness. I need only reflect on my own repeated, continuing failings to understand this. The rabbis were right. Simply learn from others. Thank you all for coming.
Nice, honey.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's mine. It's okay. All right.
I'm going to get a tissue ready. All right. I absolutely hate public speaking, so this is literally awful for me. But I know my dad, wherever he is cheering me on, telling me I can do this, because that's what he always did. I knew I had to speak today because I know my dad would want me to challenge myself. So Dad, here I go. When I think of my dad, I think of him waking us up at 2 a.m. and bringing us outside to my backyard to look through the telescope on a clear and starry night. I think of him blasting Who Let the Dogs Out at full volume on Sunday mornings, notifying us that 1, we slept too long, and 2, his homemade pancakes and waffles were done. I think of him sitting by my side at the kitchen table, helping me with chemistry and physics homework, getting so annoyed with me that I wanted him to do all the work. I think of all the times he would teach us how to tap the maple trees in our yard and make huge vats of maple syrup in our garage while everyone drove by slowly trying to figure out what we were doing. I think of the time he took me to a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert and he wore a sweater with a button up underneath it while everyone was wearing biker gang clothes. I think of all the times he would take me on long drives down windy back roads whenever I was upset and just listening to music in silence because he knew that was the only way to get through to me. I think of all the times he and my mom would slow dance in the kitchen to their favorite songs. Specifically a night this past year that he and my mom slow danced in the kitchen to Harvest Moon by Willie Nelson. Something in the air truly felt different, and I will never forget that feeling for as long as I live. I could feel their love they shared for each other as they fit so perfectly in each other's arms, just gazing into each other's eyes. I think of his random text he'd send me reminding me of how proud he was of me, even when I felt like my world was crumbling down around me. I think of all of the times I would look at him and just think to myself how blessed I was to have him as my dad. Although the last year or so was the most painful times in our lives, I came to realize so much about my relationship with my dad. He wasn't just my dad, he was my best friend. He would teach me all about space and rocks, the weather, mountains, hiking, bicycling, and music. And I always used to dream of him teaching my children about it too. I have so much anger thinking about how cancer stripped him of being a grandpa, living a beautiful retired life with my mom, watching me become a nurse, watching my sister graduate law school and become that intimidating lawyer that everyone feared going up against. Even when he was sick and bedbound and had trouble communicating, he would hold our hands as we sat beside his bed and do this little tapping thing with his fingers on our hands that felt like a heartbeat, and I can still feel that tapping now. It often snapped me out of being sad because it reminded me that my dad was still alive and he was right in front of me, and I needed to enjoy that time I had with him right in that moment. The thing is, I know I'm going to succeed and do well in life because that's what my dad said from the very beginning, even at my lowest, when it really could have gone either way. I just wish my dad would be here to see it. I will never stop talking about my dad because he kept my mom, my sister.
You're doing good, honey. Keep it up.
I lost my. I will never stop talking about my dad because he kept my mom, my sister, and I's world spinning. And I know he's going to continue to do that even if he's not physically here. I know my dad would want everyone to take his death as a reminder to hold your family and loved ones close and tell them how much you love them as often as possible. I will forever be changed by my dad, and as I told him when he was nearing the end, I'm going to live my life for him. I love you so much, Dad, and I will miss you forever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Beth, Joan's sister from Colorado and Mark's sister-in-law, and Emmy and Sarah's aunt. Kind, thoughtful, intelligent, soft-spoken, that was Mark. always preferring to communicate in a one-on-one situation in his unassuming way. He made time for everyone. If Mark was speaking, you knew he had something important to say. He always made you feel like he valued your thoughts and was really listening to what you had to say. And his responses were insightful. He always asked about everybody else, never bragging about his own successes. He was incredibly proud of his family, his girls being his proudest achievement. And he took care of and protected Joan as the adoring husband he was. On one business trip that Mark took to Denver, he made the time to visit us near Aspen, about 3 hours away from Denver. It was in the fall, and we took an amazing hike in the mountains, the golden aspen leaves at their peak. A long hike allowed us the time to talk uninterrupted. Always a private person, being in nature gave him the freedom to talk about how proud he was of his family and ask about mine. I will never forget that special time we shared. I had the opportunity of spending more time with Mark, Joan, and the girls as his disease progressed. I saw firsthand the bond that Joan and Mark shared as they traveled to Philly every 2 weeks for his treatments, a challenge made even more challenging during COVID times. Joan's devotion to Mark never wavered. When Mark went into hospice care at home, I traveled from Colorado to help care for him. As a nurse for over 35 years, I've cared for all types of patients. Mark was different. He kept his dry sense of humor. He referred to me as Aunt Beth or Nurse Beth, which I loved. And he always seemed so happy to see me, regardless of what I was doing for him or to him. I truly enjoyed taking care of him. His sweet, kind personality shone through even in his last months. Personality traits that shine brightly in his adoring girls, Emily and Sarah, as you can probably see. Mark, rest in peace, and know Joan, Emily, and Sarah will be supported and cared for by friends and family, just as you have done for all of these years. You will be missed.
Now I'd like to call forward Bill, one of Mark's colleagues at SHOT.
Mark the scientist. What can I say? He would stop by my office and say, "Guy, what's new?" Every day. But we didn't talk until our 6 o'clock sessions every night. My favorite time of day. I would park myself in the seat in Mark's office and we would talk about anything. Door was always open, no matter the topic. You mentioned you like to mentor the young scientists. I'm thankful to be in that bunch. It was very early on in my career. We had a tough meeting and I left and I stormed in anger. Mark came to my office after everybody had left and said, "Don't worry, you'll be the best of them someday." Not possible. He was truly the best. What made him the best was he was a great listener. No matter what, he would think deeply about your problem. As I look at the new generation and I try to teach them the ways Mark taught me, I tell them listening's a superpower. Mark had that superpower. There were plenty of times when he'd leave a meeting not saying a word. And he would come back to my office and apologize. "Mark, there's never a need to apologize to me for not saying a word. It truly is a superpower," because I knew you were sitting there thinking about that. And we would sit and cover all the walls in the office, all the windows, all the glass tabletops with all of the equations and everything else to try to understand what was going on. Mark, you are one of my scientific heroes. Thank you for everything you taught me.
I'd like to read some words from Mark's brother Paul and then share some of my own. Hey bro, it's your brother Paul. I'm going to assume and hope there is an afterlife as I write this. I admire that your biggest concern was not being able to take care of your family. This is among your numerous great attributes I think of when I think of you. I'm sure that everyone there today has their own thoughts of what a wonderful and amazing person you were to them. My memories of you include being a tremendous caring father and brother, a highly successful and brilliant geologist and then material scientist, an incredible bicyclist by any standards, our stargazing parties, and a very close friend. I have been extremely fortunate to have you as a brother. I can't find the words to express how much I looked up to you and admired you. We did some incredible backpacking trips when you were just in your mid to late teens. Most were in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and you told me you definitely remembered them when we were on those frequent Zoom meetings during your hospice. Let's hike the entire John Muir Trail this time when we get together again. And from Paul's partner, Linda, Mark, I always appreciated your truthfulness and kind heart. I have been mourning your passing for 2 days now and seem to cry at the drop of a hat. You were such good company whenever Paul and I were with you, always upbeat and caring, sharing with us how Joan, Emily, and Sarah were coming along. I loved hearing about everyone. We will miss you so much, Mark. You were a true and decent human being loved by all. From my loving and caring heart, Linda. Hannah Senish, the poet, resistance fighter, paratrooper, wrote, Yesh kochavim, she'oram magia arza rak asher hem atzmam avdu ve'enam. There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have been extinguished and are no more. And there are people whose scintillating memory lights the world after they themselves are no longer among us. These lights, which shine in the darkest night, they show people the light of the path. Mark was a stargazer, an explorer in the heavens, and a delver into the secrets of the earth. His scientific curiosity pervaded his very being. I remember how excited he was after I spoke about how part of the miracle of the burning bush was that Moses noticed it at all, that he turned aside and watched carefully enough, sat still enough to see that it wasn't being consumed. Mark, his eyes sparkling, said, Moses was the first scientist. That might be the first thing one noticed about him, that he saw life through the eyes of science. But he lived life with light that is still shining, burning still like that bush. And that light was Hesed, overflowing love, love that poured itself into deep and lasting relationships, love that met people where they were, that listened, that taught and explained, even as it learned and observed. For Mark, the eyes of the scientist and the heart of Hesed weren't in conflict. They were part of an integrated whole. You've heard from Emily and Sarah how he loved to give them scientific explanations of everything from the rocks on the side of the road to the blue of the sky. But even those science teachings came out of his love for them, his engagement with and deep connection to them. They both spoke about their memories of how, in the midst of a storm with lightning and thunder, he'd take them out into the garage, open the garage door, and they would just stand there, taking in all of nature's majesty and fury and beauty, while learning to count the time between the lightning and the thunder, learning to look at the world with curious eyes, learning that they were not afraid and that they were strong and that their dad loved them. As much as scientists like to measure, it's hard to measure Mark's impact on our community and on me personally. For many years, he led the Heart of Hesed, our caring or Hesed committee, reaching out to those who were ill or housebound or alone. He did so with such grace and sensitivity, knowing that for some people, even a call asking how they were could be seen as intrusive or even shaming. So he figured out how to reach them where they were, no matter what their situation was, realizing that no one size fits all, carefully considering each person as an individual, meeting their unique needs. He would often come to funerals to make sure that families knew that their loved one was seen and valued. Sometimes it was just a quiet listening in the back, and sometimes it was sharing of a few kind, caring, and insightful words that made all the difference. He did this with me as well. He was present when I was going through divorce. He would listen when I needed to be listened to, distract when I needed a distraction. I remember clearly a conversation we had when I had a crisis of confidence. I was about to perform a wedding for the first time since the divorce, and I was caught up in fear. What could I teach this young couple about marriage when my own marriage had failed? Mark helped me realize that it was precisely my pain and loss and shortcomings that could be valuable to that couple, that what I had seen as weaknesses, he realized were strengths. Mark's own strengths were so apparent that it seemed he must have always been that way, taught from the cradle by his own parents, but that was far from the case. As Emily noted, it took him a long time to become a good student. And I do think that he saw himself in those students at the science fair, coming over to them, listening to them, drawing them out, helping them to feel that they were seen and heard. His stepsister in England, Sharon, noted that Mark didn't have a good home life growing up, and that among his challenges was a father who left when he was 4 and who, even when Mark became close with him later on, never really managed to be a good dad. Sharon was amazed how Mark managed, just out of who he was, to become such a wonderful father himself. On this light-filled day, each of us can help Mark's light continue to shine, not only by remembering him, but also by remembering to truly hear and see people, to reach out to the world with the curious eyes of a scientist and a heart overflowing with Hesed. And we can together also help the loves of Mark's life, his wife Joan and his daughters Emily and Sarah, his close friends and extended family, by showing them at least a portion of the love and care and sharing of strength that Mark did so well throughout his life. Zichronam Livracha, his memory will continue to bless us all. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are tapping maple trees or listening to thunder, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. Please rise now for that hymn of memory, the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim, and remain standing through Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחת נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת משה בן שלמה וחנה, שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, יצור בצור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום המשכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Mark Davis, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. It is fitting that we close with the Kaddish, a prayer of teachers and learners. It was part of our tradition, originally not as a prayer of mourning, but as a prayer for concluding a chapter of study and recognizing how that learning could bring us closer to the world that God desired. At some point, someone made that metaphorical leap to recognizing how a life well lived can be the best textbook of all. And so we recite Kaddish Yatom. Yikadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach l'olam almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imu. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us. And let us say together, Amen. We conclude our funeral as we were welcomed into life, swaddled this time in a blanket of dirt by those we love. We'll ask first the family and then any of you who wish to place dirt upon the casket. And we ask that as we think of COVID and our precautions, that we observe the tradition of laying down the shovel between each person so that everyone can take it up on their own, and also so we can observe social distance. It is customary to place the first shovelful of dirt with the shovel upside down as a reminder that we are taking this ordinary tool and using it in a holy way, thinking of where we are and what we're doing, and focusing upon the act of hesed, of love that we are giving. Welcome the family to place dirt upon Mark's casket. Lech Yishilchach Adonai. Go your way, for God has called you. Lech v'Adonai yiyeh imach. Go your way, and may God be with you. V'halach lifnecha tzidkacha, kavod Adonai ya'asvecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. And now whoever wishes may come forward and place dirt upon the casket. Please lay it down.
geologist needs to feel the dirt.
Right.
Bye, my friend.
I worked with Mark. I worked with Mark. Oh, sorry. What's your name? Teddy Marie. Yes. Oh, yeah. Mark was one of the people who phone interviewed me. So we're missing so much. Thank you.
If folks will gather a little closer while still respecting social distance, we conclude our service with words of comfort to the family and to the mourning in our hearts. Please repeat after me. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Hamakom yenechem etchem betoch sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. God will comfort you amidst all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Now go forth in peace to life. This concludes our service. The family will be hosting Shiva outside at their house in Clark Summit on Sturbridge today and tomorrow from 3 to 5, and there's Shiva on Zoom on Thursday at the same time.
We'll do Shiva then.